landlords would have painted the place nicely. Of course, you will factor in the wear and tear. But you've stayed there for just a year and you are moving and your children has damaged the place in such a way that nobody can dwell in. Of course, it's your responsibility to reinstate the place as you came to meet it. So those are the points.
So, Titi, this is where it gets interesting. When we posted this on our social media handles and we asked for comments and contributions, they were wild.
Okay.
So Matiti will read some of the comments on our Facebook platforms to us.
And the wild ones that are coming through begins with Oko Bless, where he says, when after renting for 2 years and you want to rent the same place for a year, then the landlord says, boom, no, he's taking 2 years advance. Won't to me. That's
to me at two.
Won't to me at two. So if you cannot, you have to exit. Emmanuel Gbemu says, I rented a room, paid for it, but other person occupied it. The same room was rented to 2 different people. I reported at the Sherman police station, went to the rent control department, but nothing works out. The guy upon arrest called somebody who spoke to the police and was released to go. So my money never came and I had to stop following it. That's a really sad one that Emmanuel Gbemu, you had
what's
to
happening here?
Mileji Anthony, if I can just bring this to you.
Okay.
From 170 Ghana cedis to 250 in 2 years increment.
Okay, so a number of issues have come to bear here. Somebody, you've already even rented the place, you're already living there, and he says, I want to renew for a year. The landlord says, no. So we are back to the demand question again.
Yes.
I want 2 years.
Yes. So, it's very difficult, but the point is that if you can provide us with evidence, because when we go to the court, only the judge will ask, what is that? That is the rule of the game.
Evidence of
the demand of more than the 6 months.
Okay. Will an oral argument be,
of course,
or verbal conversation be?
Verbal conversation will do.
So I can go to rent control and say, my landlord said. So there's no
but
paper
what is
of
the
him
evidence?
demanding
Exactly.
it.
If there's a slight recording, of which of all we have to notify the landlord before you do the recording. But when there's a paperwork...
Okay, Mr. Landlord, you know that thing you said about charging me 2 years extra? Say it again.
And you confirm.
And the landlord will say it again.
You know, the tenancy agreement can even be an evidence, okay, that you've signed. And it's indicated that the landlord demanded more than the 6 months rent advance.
You two agreed that you should pay this.
So tell me, that is the gap we've seen. That landlords are just passing at the back of this and charging.
So what do you do in this case? You want to stay an extra year. So even beyond the 6 months that the current law accepts or says that you should pay, you want to stay an extra year and you want to be. The landlord says no, pay 2, pay 3. What do you do?
Yes, so at that point, you can come to the rent control department. You know, the law is there that if no offense has been committed by you, the tenant, the landlord has no right to evict you. But of course, you know, the tenancy agreement has a period. You've gone in to sign the agreement for 2 years. Of course, probably you may be paying 6 months interval. And the 2 years has not elapsed. And then within the period, the landlord is now demanding 1 year, 2 years.
Well, Oko Bless didn't say he was demanding. He said that they wanted to rent an extra year, but the landlord says he's taking 2 years. And if you can't pay the 2 years, just leave. So maybe he's also realized this renew or leave period, that 3 months, and he said that, okay, I think I want to stay. I kind of like this place. I think I like the environment. And the landlord says, bring another 2.
Okay. So, Tema, you know,
go to rent control.
All this boils down to the housing deficit we are facing. Okay. If there are a lot of, or we have enough housing, I don't think these landlords will bully us.
Okay.
Okay.
Bullying is what it is.
Yes.
So the next one talked about.
Can we have the previous one? I talked about.
So you rent a room and another person occupies it.
Right.
And then the same room was rented to 2 different people. So what happens there? There's a lot going on.
He reported to Ashama police station,
and he said he had to stop.
Went to rent control. He had to stop following.
This is a typical fraud issue. If a district police station cannot deal with this, I will advise the tenant to move to the headquarters, because this is typical fraud issue.
So, Emmanuel, this is fraud. Mr. Kwasu says if your district can't deal with it, take it to the next level.
Yes.
And let's take the next few comments.
Okay. More comments coming through from Facebook. Can we have them flipping? Okay. Paul Animoon is saying, I'm currently occupying an apartment which the owner is not in Ghana, and when he came back, he said no one is allowed to park his vehicle in the compound. Meanwhile, the compound has a large space for parking.
Okay, next.
When Kachere Odikro, when I rented in an MP apartment in 2019, the agreement in place going for my stuff from Dansoman, before I could return, he said the room is not out for rent again in less than 4 hours. Odikro moved his things to the place only to be told that, sorry, you cannot pull the things here. Kobno Fori says, the only thing I can write is,
This man is afraid of his landlord.
Adiko Michael Faith, how can a young man just out of school cough 1,000 Ghana cedis a month for 2 years rent advance? It's killing the youth. The government must take deliberate steps to make accommodations affordable in Ghana. Those so-called affordable houses are not affordable one bit, and it's the rich men that are buying it.
Okay. So, Mr. Kwasu, do you want to address the landlord said, don't park your car in my house. He has come from Abuja. He said everybody should keep their car outside.
Okay. So this has to come in a tenancy agreement. So before renting the place out, you know the space. If only the room you rented, then that's fine. But if the parking space is factored in, then until you move out, the landlord has no right. Because if he was not the person who negotiated with you, probably a caretaker, and the person has given you and it's been factored to the rent that you've paid, the real owner cannot come and change the agreement until your tenancy expired and there's a renewal of. And in that case, if the parking space is going to be taken out from you, then it has to reflect on the rent, which means there should be a reduction of the rent that you pay. And again, the tenancy agreement must come before payment. So my friend who parked his thing from Dansoma, you need to sign the agreement, you need to pay, okay, before you do all these things. So if you do, there's no tenancy agreement, and you are now going to bring your things and you brought your things, there's no agreement between you.
It sounds like, you know, Ketre may have been onto something there. He said that there was an agreement in place, and he was going to bring his things. So by saying there was an agreement in place,
so if he has signed an agreement,
maybe a verbal agreement, but an agreement nonetheless.
Exactly. If you have signed an agreement and you made payment for it, nobody can just come and say that no, we are abrogating
somebody has come
this
with more money, and so they are giving the more money person the room.
Of course, so this also fall under the fraud issue. Because if I've paid you money, we've come to an agreement and I've paid you the money, how come then you go out and then you say we want to refund my money again?
And the conversations around rent, advance, and how the toll it's taking on the youth.
Okay, so we at Rent Control, though we are there to regulate the rental industry, we've been pushing the government to come out with affordable and social housing. But of course, in January 2023, there is this bond of the National Rental Assistance Scheme to help those who cannot afford more than the 6 months that is being demanded.
Is it working?
It's working. As we speak now, there are about 3,433 people who are enjoying it out of the seed money of 27 million, which was granted to the scheme by the government. As we speak now, there are about 55 million which has been accumulated. You know, it's a revolving fund, and there's an interest of 12%.
And they are paying?
They are paying. And as I said, we have about 3,433 people who are enjoying now as the national rent. So government needs to push in more money so that a lot of people can be put on board to put the burden down on Ghanaians.
Okay, Mattis, I understand you have some more.
Yes, I have about 3, but
we've done this one.
Yes, we've done this already. Can we have the next one? That I benefited from the National Rental Assistance Scheme, and so I can say that it's working and it's good. My only issue is transportation and also the distance of affordable housing, because that is also a key issue when you're looking for a place. But Critical GH is saying that renting in Tema is like feeding 1,000 people a
That's
day.
10,000. That's 10,000 people a day. Okay, next comment.
Can we have the next comment? Critical GH is not easy. Jerry Nyamador says, landlady locking gate because it's 9 p.m. Imagine coming home after 9 p.m. Thank God I left that house. So, curfew issues here with Jerry.
Thank you, Titi, for helping us with all those
Awesome.
things that we accumulated. From your comments on the screen, Matiti, thank you so much. Mr. Kwasu, so it's plenty. We've talked about, the curfews and about how your landlord should not ask you to come home at 9 p.m. So what should be, if you mentioned these things should be in the agreement.
Yeah.
Let's all agree what should be in a tenancy agreement.
Okay, so the point you made, there's part of the ingredient, just as I mentioned, you need to factor in our constitution, the Rent Act, and then the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, because the agreement should not impose or infringe on anybody's human right. And you cannot do any illegality. We call it fictitious agreement. You cannot just do things what you think. Whatever you do must fall in line with our laws. So, and because agreements vary from premises to premises, the two of you, being the landlord and tenant, can sit down and agree on agreement that will be peculiar to your premises. Just as I mentioned, person can fit in all the bed, the seats, the chairs, and everything. Then you pay for it. There will be another apartment where it will be a skeleton, where you have to bring all your things.
So there's a fully furnished and there's one that you need to bring your own
So
furniture.
you need to sit down and agree on it. The landlord cannot impose anything on you, actually.
Should the agreement be brought to rent control? Does rent control need to approve for it to be legally binding?
Okay, so let me take this opportunity to thank GBC and then thank GTV for this opportunity to educate. The law as we have now means that when you agree on any tenancy agreement and you sign, it's the responsibility of the landlord to deposit a copy at the rent control department before you come and collect money or you take money as the rent advance. But people are not doing it because they do it at our blind side, okay? So this is the education. Whenever the tenancy is signed, the landlord is to deposit a copy for us to go through and make sure that there's no infringement, we are going in accordance with the law. And then after approving, the landlord has now right to go and collect the money. So the point is that before you collect money as the rent advance, you need to deposit a copy of the rent agreement or the tenancy agreement with the rent control department.
And during the term of the agreement, so if whether it's demanded or it's paid or collected, the 1 or 2 years, can the landlord change their mind and say, you know what, I gave you the room for this, I want this for it now, so you need to pay me the rest of the money? Can they do that?
So they can do that if during the period there's been an improvement that will benefit the tenant. Example is just coming out with a single room. Now the landlord has made or has got money to make it a self-contained by adding toilet and bath, maybe adding a kitchen. You cannot say that because you pay 1 CD, you have to wait for the 2 years or the 1 year that you've paid before the landlord starts increasing. After the improvement, the landlord will give you a notice for 1 month. And after the 1 month, he has that right to collect because now he has improved the place, which is benefiting you. Rather than you moving out midnight to go and ease yourself or go and bath in a compound or a public washing room. Now everything has been factored. When you came, that was not how the place was. And you paid for how you came to meet it. But now there's been an improvement that will benefit you. So in realistic terms, you need to pay for the additional improvement that has been made.
A lot of people tell us that they are not against paying a bit more. But paying a bit more becomes problematic when there has been no improvement in the facility that they are occupying. So is that allowed for a landlord to say, I'm charging you more just because the 2 years are up and I'm just adding on? And what percentage? Is there a threshold that the law permits a landlord to increase the rent?
Okay, so let me start with the last question. There's no percentage. What we do as rent control, that when the negotiation ceased or it ended and there's no agreement, then the two of you may fall on rent control, apply for what we call an assessment. So at that assessment to elevate how much you should pay realistically. But we don't have any percentage. Okay, so that is the point. But your first point if you can remind me of the first point.
We are talking about if there's been no improvement made to the facility and then there is an increase.
Okay, so in that case, there are a lot of landlords who use quality materials to build. And just as we use the wear and tear issue, somebody may build and knows that in 10 years' time before he will do any improvement. And somebody can also use inferior material, and that every 2 years he has to do maintenance. So if the person who used 10 years quality materials and a law which requires that every 2 years before you can increase rent, and the person has not done anything in your house, but he has used quality materials, the law requires that every 2 years he can. But for the 2 years person, by 2 years, that definitely the room will deteriorate. And if it deteriorates, the landlord is required to improve it before he increase the rent.
But a lot of people don't, Mr. Kosu, and they just come and say, okay, I'm increasing the rent. You know that no cement or sand or water has touched the building.
Yes, so that's the point I'm making, that if you are there and the person or the premises is not deteriorating, then you should assume that the landlord has used quality material. But when you see that the place is deteriorating and the landlord is still demanding rent increment, then you can activate the assessment policy or the assessment clause, where we'll come in and make sure that we assess, and if the place is deteriorating and your time has not reached, we make sure we reduce the rent so that it can compensate you.
Has anybody ever reduced rent? Please, if you have an experience of your landlord reducing your rent, whether it was because of the city appreciation, whether it was, for any reason, please share with me. I need those good thoughts coming my way. Nobody has ever reduced rent. It always goes up.
No, so you see, because of fear of victimization or fear of losing the place, a lot of tenants keep quiet. They keep quiet because if they go to talk, the landlord will then say, your tenancy has expired. I won't renew it again. But if you know that you have some right, you come closer to us.
Before we go, please, these agents, Mr. Kosu, help us appreciate the work of it. Are they legal? Is it okay for somebody to say, give me 1,000 cedis to show you a room? You have to transport these people around. You have to pay them a daily rate. Are they regulated?
Okay. So the current law, which is the Act 2, is it recognized the duties or the services of agents. But in that case, it prescribed only the fees that they have to be paid, which is 5% of the services.
So it's not 10%.
It's not 10%. But luckily for us, in 2000, we passed this law. When I mean we passed this law, the Minister of Works and Housing under the the Real Estate Agency Council passed that law. And that law, the council is supposed to regulate fully the agents and brokers. So what they have to do, or what the law requires them to do as the council, is to train anybody who calls himself agent and broker, give them certificates or license, inspect their offices, prescribe fees and charges, and prescribe their functions. But unfortunately, since 2000, the law has not kicked off. We are lucky a new CEO has been appointed. He's on his toes. He's making sure that you combine everything to make sure that this law works. So there's a regulating, or there's an act that is meant to regulate anybody who calls himself agent and broker.
So they are not supposed to take more than 5%. This is 5% of what is agreed.
What the rent advance that has been paid to the landlord.
So it's not every visit. Agents are not supposed to be
this
taking
left
money.
and right, 10% left and right is illegal. And this moving fee is also illegal. Because what people are just doing, they are just using this forum to get their daily bread. Because if you are looking for 2-bedroom house, they know you are looking for 2-bedroom house. They will take you to a single room or a 3-bedroom house just for you to go and they say, no, this is not what I'm looking for. Then they will require that you pay another money another day for another visit.
So your work is big. So final words, what's rent control doing? Are we... The question I want to ask is a bit problematic.
Yes.
Is rent control working?
Yes, just as I mentioned again, we are working. But the resource that will cushion us to do more is not coming. As we speak now, we have only 2 moving vehicles in the entire country. When you move to some of our offices, and the office equipment and logistics are.
Somebody said rent control lives in a rented building.
No, that is not. That's
just
not
mystery.
true.
Okay, so you need the
yes, we need
facility.
the resources. But luckily for us, September last year we were able to launch the digitization, which 15 of our offices across the country have been digitalized. But that is not enough compared to about 68 offices that we have in the entire country. We need more. Okay. And anybody, especially the government, can cushion us so that we can do more and then fulfill our mandate as rent control department.
Thank you so much. Mr. Emmanuel Posu is an alternative dispute resolution consultant and head of public relations at Rent Control Department. And if you have any more questions, you can...